Hello guys and welcome to another video. Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods, aka Percy Jackson and the Olympians number 6 is coming out September 26th. And today we're reading and reviewing Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth. Probably my favorite book in the series, or my second favorite book in the series. I'm so excited to get into all of the messy Percabeth / Rachel love triangle drama. Let's go. Page 2, we're already getting fed. Think positive. Tomorrow you're off to camp. After orientation, you've got your date. It's not a date, I protested. It's just Annabeth, Mom. Jeez. She's coming all the way from camp to meet you. Well, yeah. You're going to the movies. Yeah? Just the two of you. Mom! And of course, 2 seconds later, Rachel is there to ruin the moment. I was about to get out of the car when I looked over at the steps of the school. Paul Blowfist was greeting a girl with fizzy red hair. She wore a maroon t-shirt and ratty jeans decorated with marker drawings. When she turned, I caught a glimpse of her face and the hairs on my arms stood straight up. It's just because he recognizes her people do not get any wrong ideas. I'm not a Rachel hater. It sounds like I am, but I just don't like Rachel as a person. To ship something, I need to like both people. And I don't like her, so I can't ship it. I'm gonna try to be objective throughout this video and the one for next week, reading The Last Olympian, and I want to see if Rachel ever stood any kind of chance. So when I read things like this, I'll tell you guys. Whenever I thought about her, and I'm not saying I thought about her, she just crossed my mind from time to time, okay? Why is he so defensive? And how come he remembered her whole name? It's kind of sus. Do you think if things after orientation had gone right, nothing had exploded and Rachel hadn't been there, do you think that afternoon would have been a date for Percy and Annabeth? Because I burst out of the alley onto East 81st and ran into Annabeth. Hey, you're out early, she laughed, grabbing my shoulders to keep me from tumbling into the street. Watch where you're going, seaweed brain. For a split second, she was in a good mood, and everything was fine. She looked like she was ready to catch a movie, have a cool afternoon hanging out together. Then Rachel Elizabeth Dare, still covered in monster dust, came charging out of the alley, yelling, "Percy, wait up!" Annabeth's smile melted. And then afterwards, when Rachel leaves and they're talking about her, she's like, "Oh, you told the mortal girl about half-bloods? So you told her the truth. She recognized me from Hoover Dam. You've met her before? Last winter, but seriously, I barely know her. She's kind of cute. I never thought about it." Annabeth kept walking towards York Avenue. "I'll deal with the school, I promised, anxious to change the subject. Honest, it'll be fine." Interesting. Percy feels like he's being caught, even though he's done absolutely nothing wrong. There's nothing officially between them, but clearly he must not be as oblivious as everyone thinks or as he projects, because he clearly feels like something is happening. This just keeps getting better. Nothing caps off the perfect morning like a long taxi ride with an angry girl. I tried to talk to Annabeth, but she was acting like I just punched her grandmother. She's so petty. I love her. So we're at camp. We've already met Grover and Juniper, his girlfriend. Then we went back to the cabin where we found Tyson. It was all very exciting. We met Quintus and Mrs. O'Leary for the first time. And then that night, Percy got an iris message from Nico. He discovered he's still alive, working with some kind of ghost and looking for a way to talk to Bianca, and that way might be to kill Percy. Now it's the morning, we're having breakfast, we're at the Poseidon table, and Chiron brings Grover over to talk to Percy because he wants Percy to convince Grover about something. Annabeth shows up at the table. I was waiting for this to happen. I didn't know it was gonna be now, but let's read. It was hard to concentrate on what she was saying because everybody in the dining pavilion was stealing glances at us and whispering, and Annabeth was right next to me. Right next to me. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. "We need to talk," she insisted, "but the rules." She knew as well as I did that campers weren't allowed to switch tables. Half-bloods had to sit with their cabins. So Annabeth keeps talking, and Percy's like, I shifted my weight trying to think clearly, so try to scooch over a little bit further away from her so he can think. Annabeth nodded. Despite how serious she was acting, I was happy she wasn't mad at me anymore. And I kind of liked the fact that she'd broken the rules to come sit next to me. So they're about to head into the war games with Quintus, with the scorpions in the forest, and they're being paired off, and then we get Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. Nice, I grinned at Annabeth. Your armor is crooked, was her only comment, and she redid my straps for me. This moment seems like such a small moment, but it's forever engraved in my mind. Birch Bug was everything, to me specifically, and she did a lot of fan art of Percy Jackson, and she did this one. It's such a small moment, but I love the fact that she found it special enough to capture it. I love you, Birch. I wish you were still with us. As a fan artist, I'm pretty sure she's still alive. Annabeth's hands slipped into mine. Under different circumstances, I would have been embarrassed. But here in the dark, I was glad to know where she was. It was about the only thing I was sure of. So it's nighttime, I've read a bit more, and I'm on page 126, and we could say that some things have definitely started to happen. Where to start? So after they find the entrance to the labyrinth and find out that it's in Camp Half-Blood, which means it's very dangerous, Annabeth gets to go to the attic of the big house and ask for a quest. She gets the prophecy and she will not reveal one of the lines. Why? Nobody knows. I need help. She turned to me. Will you come? I didn't even hesitate. I'm in. She smiled for the first time in days, and that made it all worthwhile. They decide who is going on the quest, so we get Annabeth, Percy, Grover, and Tyson, a mix of the first two books that we got. So after talking a bit with Quintus and noticing how he's like being super mysterious and cryptic and kind of sus, Percy goes out and he looks for Annabeth, and he finds her in the Athena cabin, and it's the first time he's there. So obviously our boy is very worried because he knows that Annabeth is keeping something from them, and keeping stuff from prophecies is never a good idea. So he's starting to give her a pep talk, and he's like, you're going to do awesome. She looked at me gratefully, but then stared down at all the books and scrolls she pulled from the shelves. I'm worried, Percy. Maybe I shouldn't have asked you to do this, or Tyson or Grover. I think the first line, maybe I shouldn't have asked you to do this, period, is because the prophecy obviously mentions something that she thinks might apply to Percy. So she's like, oh, she tries then to cover it up by saying Tyson or Grover. And then Percy's like, hey, we're friends, we wouldn't miss it. But she stopped herself, about to say why he specifically should not go. What is it? I asked. The prophecy? I'm sure it's fine, she said in a small voice. What was the last line? Then she did something that really surprised me. She blinked back tears and put out her arms. I stepped forward and hugged her. Butterflies started turning my stomach into a mosh pit. Mosh pit, not spit. Hey, it's okay, I patted her back. Percy is not the best at comforting people, but he tries, and that's what matters. I was aware of everything in the room. I felt like I could read the tiniest print on any book on the shelves. Annabeth's hair smelled like lemon soap. This is different. I don't want anything happen to ... any of you. Clearly about to say I don't want anything to happen to you because she loves him in general and because of the prophecy. Behind me, somebody cleared his throat. It was one of Annabeth's half-brothers, Malcolm. His face was bright red. Sorry, he said. Archery practice is starting, Annabeth. Chiron said to come find you. I stepped away from Annabeth. We were just looking at maps, I said stupidly. Our boy is stupid, but he's also self-aware, so gotta love that. I nodded, feeling more confused than I ever had in my life. I wanted to run from the cabin, but then again I didn't. Later that night, Percy gets his second dream about Nico and what he's doing and sees him raising the dead using, you guessed it, McDonald's. And it's so funny to me rereading this, knowing all the fandom there is to know about Nico, that after he raises the dead and talks to them, he's like, you're dismissed, thank you. So he's not as much of an edgelord as the fandom wants to paint him. So after that, Percy, Grover, Annabeth, and Tyson finally go into Zeus's fist, and they go into the labyrinth, and things honestly aren't going very well. They go into a prison, they meet a 100-handed whatever they're called. I just read it and I already forgot. Tyson is like, you really shouldn't meet your heroes, and then they leave again. They find Janus, the two-faced god who is a god of choices. He tries to make Annabeth make a choice. Annabeth doesn't. Hera appears out of nowhere, saves the day, and then they're back to normal, and they wasted a wish on something that they supposedly already knew. So they're like, we're tired, let's try to sleep. You're doing great. Besides, we never know what we're doing. It always works out. Remember Circe's island? She snorted. You made a cute guinea pig. And Waterland, how you got us thrown off that ride. I got us thrown off? That was totally your fault. See, it'll be fine. She smiled, which I was glad to see, but the smile faded quickly. So I've read a little bit more and we're finally at the ranch where Percy has to clean all of the carnivore horse poop. Am I right? Yes, I think I am. And we meet this man and I'm devastatingly reminded of the fact that this guy appears, and spoilers for books after Trials of Apollo, he appears in The Sun and the Star. He is quite happily living in the underworld right next to Hades' palace in a farm, I think. I don't remember what they were growing, but I think he's happily in love with either a minotaur or a half man, half bull. I don't remember which half was which. They take this random ass character and then they're like, okay, you're gonna be in this random ass gay relationship in this book. And normally I would be all for it, but I don't know why I'm just like, what? It just makes no sense why you would do that. I would much rather they had invented another character or used someone else from mythology, because this felt like completely out of left field, out of pocket. I don't know, but seeing him here, I'm like, you don't even know what's coming, man. You don't even know. Okay, so Percy managed to clean all the poop out from the stable. Then he went back to the ranch. His friends were being held captive and he fought against the main three-bodied guy. And he won thanks to a blessing from, he thinks, either Artemis or Apollo, since he asked for their help when he was aiming with a bow and arrow. We know, people who have already read this, we already know that it was actually Hera. And after that, Nico stays in the ranch and our team leaves to keep searching the labyrinth. So we get to the Sphinx, and of course, Annabeth, as always, is way too proud for her own freaking good. And Percy's like, well, I'm very impressed, but at the same time, Annabeth, you're gonna get us killed. And after that, we get to a bypass. There's two tunnels. Obviously, Grover feels the call of Pan of the Wild, and he takes the left tunnel with the nature thingamadigs. The spider is leading them to Hephaestus' forge, and we're gonna investigate it. That's where I left off yesterday, right before we get to the Percabeth kiss, and then to Calypso. High is high and low is low, all within one chapter. It's incredible that Rick manages to do this. But right before we get there, we get a really funny Percy and Annabeth conversation talking about how Annabeth came to be. I was a brainchild, literally. Children of Athena are sprung from the divine thoughts of our mother and the mortal ingenuity of our father. We are supposed to be a gift, a blessing from Athena on the men she favors. But Percy, the spider's getting away. Do you really want me to explain the exact details of how I was born? He's like, no, that's okay. She ran ahead, I followed, but I wasn't sure I would ever look at Annabeth the same way again. I don't know if this is fanon or if this was ever mentioned in the books, but does Annabeth have a belly button? Okay, page 202. It's happening, guys. It's about to happen. So obviously all the scene is great. From Percy yelling Annabeth to taking her cap off and then telling her to like, Annabeth, run, put your cap on and leave me. It's like, what? I'm not leaving you. I've got a plan. I'll distract them. You can use the metal spider. Maybe it'll lead you back to Hephaestus. You have to tell him what's going on. But you'll be killed. I'll be fine. Besides, we've got no choice. Annabeth glared at me like she was going to punch me. And then she did something that surprised me even more. She kissed me. Be careful, seaweed brain. She put on her hat and vanished. I probably would have sat there for the rest of the day, staring at the lava and trying to remember what my name was. It really doesn't get any better than this, does it? And now we're gonna go to Calypso's island. Fun! I'm so happy to be in this fandom, like, to experience moments like this again and again. These books are magic. Probably the only positive thing that we get from Percy landing on Calypso's island, besides, you know, him surviving everything, is that we get to know that Percy mutters about Annabeth in his sleep. I really want, if we get season 4 of Disney Plus TV show, I really want to see what Percy has to say about Annabeth in his sleep, especially after that incredible first kiss. So we finally left Calypso's island and Percy's attending his own funeral now. And before we get anywhere else, I have to say that even though none of this was Percy's fault, Annabeth has every single right to be mad at him, because not only did she finally risk it all and kiss him, Not only did she listen to him and leave him there, even though she wanted to help, Percy blew up and disappeared for what I can only assume is weeks, leaving her to think that her best friend slash something more slash the only other person that she knows was with her at the end of her quest is gone. She thinks he's dead, and after that, he shows up. She immediately knows that he's been hanging out with Calypso, deliberately choosing to stay there in Ogygia instead of coming back to her to Camp Half-Blood. And immediately after that, what does he do? He's like, okay, now, after I've been with Calypso, now we need Rachel Elizabeth Stairs' help. Yeah, this girl that you took a dislike to immediately and that you especially don't like because she's a mortal who I've already shared the biggest secret in the world with. Yeah, we're gonna work with her. I can understand why a 15-year-old Annabeth would not be okay with that. But going back to the funeral, Annabeth turned to face the audience. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she managed to say, "He was probably the bravest friend I've ever had." And then she saw me, her face went blood red. "He's right there." People were like, "Oh, Percy, you're alive, so good. Where have you been?" Annabeth interrupted, shoving aside the other campers. I thought she was going to punch me, but instead she hugged me so fiercely she nearly cracked my ribs. The other campers fell silent. Annabeth seemed to realize she was making a scene and pushed me away. We thought you were dead, Seaweed Brain. The fact that it's in front of all camp makes it funnier, yes. But I wonder what would have happened if I had just been the two of them. "I'm sorry, I got lost." Lost? She yelled. 2 weeks, Percy. Where in the world? And then she's like, oh, I know where. Goddamn. This vlog is gonna be like an hour long, but it's not my fault. Rick decided to make it so Percabeth heavy. You are the single most annoying person I have ever met. And she stormed out of the room. I stared at the doorway. I felt like hitting something. So much for being the bravest friend she's ever had. She will calm down. She's jealous, my boy. That's stupid. It hardly matters. Annabeth is very territorial about her friends, in case you haven't noticed. She was quite worried about you. And now that you're back, I think she suspects where you were marooned. Honestly, Nico isn't even half the edgelord or emo boy as the fandom thinks, because this guy, "I'm sorry, Percy. Minos told me you were in danger. He convinced me to go back into the maze. You were trying to help us?" So Nico literally thinks that his sister, the only person he loved in the world, is dead because of Percy, who promised he would keep her safe. Then he tries to contact his sister for a while, and she only appears when Percy is there, obviously making him very mad and resentful. And then when he thinks Percy and his friends are in danger, he walks back into the maze when he could have done nothing, and he tries to save them. Nico's a sweetheart. "Come inside for cake and ice cream," I said. "It sounds like we've got a lot to talk about." And that is it. That is the end of the Battle of the Labyrinth. So clearly a lot has happened since I last updated you, but the most important thing is that now, in my mind, I'm debating the order of Percy Jackson book ranking. Deep, deep in my soul, I've always known that my favorite book was between this and The Last Olympian. However, after the last reread, this one, I'm a bit confused. It's terrible. I can't imagine having had to wait a year or 2 years between this one and The Last Olympian to find out what finally happened with Percabeth. I understand Percy and where he's coming from. He's 15 years old. He's allowed to have more than one crush at the same time, I believe. Especially when things with Annabeth are super complicated. Rachel is over there just providing simplicity and a more or less normal life, which Annabeth can never provide. So I think Percy in this whole book is just not enamored, but he finds the idea of Rachel extremely appealing, especially because of what's happening with Annabeth and Luke. Do I think Percy actually likes Rachel in this book and has a crush on her, even though he is in love with Annabeth? I am very reluctant to say this, but I think he is. But I will say this, I think most of the crush stems from the fact that he just finds her comforting and the fact that she is something outside of his life. She is his only mortal friend, and he finds solace in that. Rachel is like a crutch for Percy, and he's just like, okay, I am going to chill out with you here because this is easy, this is simple, this I understand, and all his feelings for Annabeth are just very complicated and very messy. He's so tired that he can't make himself untangle that mess yet. Okay, but what happened since the last time I updated you? Well, the first time they go into the labyrinth with Rachel, it's a real mess, and Annabeth is not having it with Rachel. The brightness that led us straight into a trap, Annabeth asked. Lay off her, Annabeth. She's doing the best she can. And then Annabeth marches off into the shadows. Annabeth's not usually like this, I told her. I don't know what her problem is. Rachel raised her eyebrows. Are you sure you don't know? What do you mean, boys? She muttered, totally blind. Things like this make me understand why Rick decided later on in the Heroes of Olympus to make Annabeth and Rachel friends, because if it hadn't been for Percy and all of the strong emotions that Annabeth was feeling during this book, they could have been friends. Under different circumstances, I think they're very compatible as friends. As someone who is also very, very territorial with my friends, even though I try not to be, I can understand Annabeth feeling threatened by another presence there, especially because it's her quest. She's supposed to lead it. She's not supposed to need the help of a mortal girl who she doesn't even know, who Percy might have a crush on, who Percy might be developing a crush on. She's just feeling very threatened, both as a leader of this quest and as a friend. So Kronos somehow is living in Luke's body. We don't know, but it's creepy as hell. And it's the first fight that Percy, as a grown child, as a 15-year-old, runs from. And that doesn't usually happen, kids. Annabeth had been crying the entire time we'd been running. Now she had collapsed and put her head between her knees. Her sobs echoed in the tunnel. Annabeth lifted her head. Her eyes were red from crying. What was wrong with Luke? What did they do to him? He gave himself over to Kronos, I said. I'm sorry, Annabeth, but Luke is gone. No, she insisted. You saw when Rachel hit him. When it hit him, just for a second, he was dazed. He came back to his senses. So maybe Kronos wasn't completely settled in the body or whatever. It doesn't mean Luke was in control. You want him to be able. Is that it? Annabeth yelled. You didn't know him before. Percy, I did. What is it with you? I snapped. What do you keep defending him? Whoa, you two, Rachel said. Knock it off. When Rachel is making sense, it's not a good sign. Annabeth turned to her. Stay out of it, mortal girl. If it wasn't for you. Whatever she was going to say, her voice broke. She put her head down again and sobbed miserably. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know how. I still felt stunned. I knelt next to Annabeth. Hey, I'm sorry. We need to move. And here I am hoping for a Percabeth hug, like the one they had after the Sirens in Sea of Monsters, or the countless other hugs they've had. He's like, oh, I wanted to comfort her. Then go freaking hug her, man. Go hug her. Someone hug Annabeth, please. She's sobbing. Am I a fan of the fact that Percy memorized Rachel's phone number? No, I am not a fan. So Rachel's like, you can call me or something. And he's like, yeah, sure. I guess I sounded unenthusiastic or something, but that's not how I meant it. I just wasn't sure what to say with all my friends, meaning Annabeth, standing around. And I guess my feelings had gotten pretty mixed up the last couple of days, which I hate. I have to say, in my mind and in my heart, this is all him reacting to Annabeth's reaction to Luke and how she is processing all of this. And that is leading him to Rachel. I don't think it would have come from him if things with Luke hadn't been the way they are. Am I gaslighting myself? I don't know, but that's the way I'm choosing to interpret the text. And then the Pegasi come and they have to write them, and no one wants Nico to write with them. So Annabeth's like, dude, come on, we have to go to camp. And Nico's like, for you, but I'm not staying. I raised an eyebrow at Annabeth like, how come all of a sudden Nico listens to you? She stuck her tongue out at me. And it's things like that that make Percabeth the real deal. They can communicate without words, and that's something that Percy and Rachel will never have. Years of friendship and fighting evil together just cannot be replaced. I don't know why I'm getting so worked up. I know Percabeth is endgame, but still. So then the Battle of the Labyrinth starts once they get to camp, and Percy and Annabeth are fighting side by side. It's one of those rare moments where we actually get to see Annabeth fighting with a sword, which I'm really looking forward to seeing her do in the show if we ever get season 4. This dragon lady, Campe, shows up and they're both like, we're gonna die. I ran after her and found Annabeth by my side, keeping pace, her sword in her hand. This might be it, she said. Could be. Nice fighting with you, Seaward Brain. Ditto. He has a way with words, doesn't he? About to die with the love of his life next to him, and he's like, ditto. And then, of course, we know that they win the Battle of the Labyrinth with the first casualties from camp, And it's very sad, and I love seeing that side of Dionysus, the more human side to him. It gives him more of a 3D character feel. He's more than the mean camp director by this point. And after that, you'd think things would be better. You know, we beat the Battle of the Labyrinth, but no, things are worse. Annabeth and I pretty much skirted around each other. I was glad to be with her, but it also kind of hurt. And it hurt when I wasn't with her too. This boy is totally in love with Annabeth, and everyone knows that. Rachel kind of knows that. Sally Jackson definitely knows that and is their main shipper, aside from me. Percy, what does it mean if you want to be with someone so much, but it also kind of hurts to be with them, but it also really, really hurts to not be with them? It means you're conflicted and you need to sort out your feelings, man. It makes me so sad that Percy and Annabeth are fighting at the end of summer, because that never happens. They always fight at the beginning and in the middle, but in the end, they come together and they put their minds together and they work it out. And then Percy's like, okay, I'm gonna miss you. And he has that memory, those feelings to keep him going all throughout the school year. And that is what he holds on to until he gets to go back to camp. That's what happened between book 1 and 2. That's why he kept Annabeth's picture with him. Here, they part on very bad terms. So before they part ways, Percy is asking Annabeth about the prophecy because, like all of us, we want to know what that line was that she censored. And the child of Athena's final stand that was Daedalus, destroy with a hero's final breath. But what was the last? And lose a love to worse than death. Annabeth had tears in her eyes. That was the last line, Percy. Are you happy now? Oh, so Luke? Percy, I didn't know who the prophecy was talking about. I didn't know if she faltered helplessly. Luke and I, for years, he was the only one who really cared about me. I thought, before she could continue, a sparkle of light appeared next to us, like someone had opened a gold curtain in the air. Percy has to be really dense to not pick up on the fact that she's like, I didn't know who the prophecy was talking about, and I haven't been able to look you in the eye because, surprise, surprise, I thought the prophecy was about you, you big doofus. Annabeth then goes on to put Hera in her place. She looked just the way she had when she'd faced the Sphinx, like she wasn't going to accept an easy answer, even if it got her in serious trouble. I realized that was one of the things I liked best about Annabeth. I'm sorry, Annabeth told me. I should get back. I'll keep in touch. Listen, Annabeth, I thought about Mount St. Helens, Calypso's island, Luke and Rachel Elizabeth Dare, and how suddenly everything had gotten so complicated. I wanted to tell Annabeth that I didn't really want to be so distant from her. Then King Argus honked his horn down on the road and I lost my chance. She jogged down the hill, I watched her until she reached the cabins. She didn't look back once. I hate that this is so perfect because then it mirrors what happens at the end of The Last Olympian when Percy and Annabeth both race down the hill towards the road and Percy doesn't look backwards. Both so perfect and so painful at the same time. Good writing right there, god damn it. And then of course we have the birthday party with the blue birthday cake where Poseidon shows up and he's like, very bad things are coming. And then Percy finally plants Calypso's plan and he is surprised to find that Nico is right there. And Nico's like, dude, I got some news. And we all know what's coming. It's a great ending. Honestly, it's one of the best endings because it perfectly sets up what's going to happen. Probably the book 1 is the best with Luke turning out to be the villain. Nobody expected that. Okay, number 1. Book 2, book 4, and then book 5, and then book 3. 5 beats 2 because Percabeth is a thing. And that beats anything. So I think that's it. Those are all my thoughts and opinions on the Battle of the Labyrinth. I can't believe that I am debating changing my ranking for the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books. Because you know me. You know that I started reading them around like 2012. 11 years ago. And I've done 100,000 rereads. I've seen all the fan art, I've read all the fanfics, I know all the fanon. So the fact that 11 years later, I might be rethinking my ranking of this 5-book series is crazy to me, but I don't know. I think I have to let it sit. It might just be my dislike for Percy and Rachel's relationship. I am not a multi-shipper, okay? Never have been, never will be. I don't hate Rachel anymore, okay? I'm 24. I've grown up. But don't like her with Percy. romantically. That being said, please leave a like if you liked this video. Comment down below if through any of your rereads you've had that moment of realization where you might have to change your ranking, because that is crazy to me. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click that bell button so you get notifications every time I post a new video. I post videos just like this every single Friday, and I guess I'll see you next Friday and we'll be reading The Last Olympian. Bye! Got some